The Town of La Plata Planning Commission meeting is called to order. Madam Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call for quorum verification purposes?
Chair Banks,
Here.
Vice Chair Hudnall. Here. Councilman Gutenberg,
Here.
Commissioner Whale. Here. Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Vice Chair Hudnall, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
To the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you please record for the that Commissioner Ford is present?
So noted.
Thank you. For the purposes of ex parte disclosure, let me ask each of the commissioners and Councilman Gutenberg, have you engaged in any off-the-record communications with applicants, developers, neighbors, or other stakeholders regarding any of the projects that are before the commission outside of the hearing, the public hearing process? Councilman Gutenberg?
No, I have not.
Vice Chair Hudnall?
No, I have not.
Commissioner Whale?
No, I have not.
Commissioner Miller?
No.
Commissioner Ford?
No, I have not.
Nor have I. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes from our April 7th, 2026 meeting. Have all the commissioners and councilmen reviewed the minutes from that April 7th meeting, with the exception of Vice Chair Hudnall? Is there a motion to approve the minutes as is, or are there changes or corrections you would like to put forward?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. By show of hands, a unanimous approval for the April 7th meeting minutes. Moving on to the matters of discussion, let me turn to you, Director Dooley, and have you walk us through those, please, sir.
The first item on our agenda tonight is Major Site Plan 04-2025. This is a request from the Charles County Board of Education, who are proposing to construct a 75,292 square foot addition to the existing La Plata High School facility here in La Plata. And they're also proposing associated site improvements or renovations across the campus. Keenar Johnson, our senior planner, we haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, will be making the presentation. After his presentation, members of the school district are here. We also have the traffic engineer here, Carl Wilson, who prepared the traffic study for the school, as well as the town's consulted traffic engineer, Kyle with Mead and Hunt, who reviewed the traffic study prepared by the traffic group. So that's who we have online. Will be present. The applicant's architect is also on her way, so we may see her a little bit after the presentation. But with that, I will turn over. I'll turn over the presentation to Keenar.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Keenar Johnson. I'm the senior planner, and I'm here to present Major Site Plan 04-2025 for La Plata High School. Next slide. The subject property is at 6035 Radio Station Road. The applicant is Joe Kadeshti of COA Barrett. The owner is the Board of Education of Charles County, Maryland. And the request is to construct a 75,292 square foot addition to the existing La Plata High School, along with associated site improvements across the campus. Next slide. On October 23rd, 2025, the Charles County Board of Education identified the need for additional capacity at La Plata High School. To address this, the Charles County Board of Education proposes to a phase expansion and renovation totaling approximately 292 square feet, increasing capacity to an estimated 1,594 students. The project also includes on-site circulation improvements to address existing traffic and student drop-off issues, as well as new shared use path along Radio Station Road to enhance pedestrian connectivity. Construction is anticipated to begin on July 1st, 2026, following the end of the school year. The town's plan review consultants have evaluated the proposal and identified no outstanding concerns subject to the conditions of approval outlined in attachment number 1. Next slide. The proposed site plan includes a 75,292 square foot expansion of La Plata High School, constructed as a single phase with 5 subphases spanning from July 2026 through June 2028. Phase 1 includes new classrooms, offices, administrative spaces, and visual arts facilities, along with interior modifications to support safe egress. Subsequent subphases include the construction of staircases C and E, development of a new gymnasium with temporary restroom accommodations, and installation of a bridge connection linking the new addition to the existing building. These improvements are designed to enhance circulation, provide safe and efficient access, and ensure full integration between the new and existing facilities in compliance with applicable codes. Next slide. Following the building addition, La Plata High School will undergo phase interior renovations from June 2028 through December 2030. Phase 2 includes renovations to the east and west classroom wings, creation of temporary media space, and upgrades to the auditorium and music rooms. Phase 3 focuses on renovations to the north wing and central areas, along with kitchen, cafeteria, and gym support improvements extending through late 2030. Phase 4 includes final West Wing classroom renovations to convert temporary spaces into permanent classrooms, re-roofing of the building, and final project completion activities, including media relocation and construction of Stair G. Next slide. Phase 1, occurring from July 2026 through December 2030, includes parking lot and on-site circulation improvements, as well as the addition of 2 new driveways along Radio Station Road. These site improvements are detailed in the applicant's civil site plan. Next slide. The site circulation analysis identified existing issues, including inadequate parent pickup and drop-off capacity, overlapping traffic patterns between buses and vehicles, and limited pedestrian access, all contributing to congestion during peak periods. Next slide. The proposed design improves circulation by introducing a dedicated parent drop-off loop with increased capacity, a one-way traffic pattern with a bypass lane, and better separation between buses, vehicles, and pedestrians. Additional improvements include expanded bus staging areas, reconfigured parking, and designated control points to enhance safe and efficient bus operations. Overall, these changes are expected to significantly improve traffic flow, reduce conflicts, and enhance safety on site. Next slide. While not required by the town zoning code, the site plan includes bicycle racks at the building entrance near the student parking lot. This feature supports alternative transportation options and enhances overall site accessibility. Next slide. In spring 2027, the town of La Plata will begin construction of a $3.2 million shared use path connecting Milton Summers Middle School to Laurel Springs Regional Park, ultimately linking to the countywide trail network. The 10-foot wide asphalt path is designed for pedestrians and bicyclists of all ages and abilities and is funded through a combination of town, county, state, and federal sources. As part of the high school project, the applicant will construct the portion of the shared use path along their radio station road frontage. These improvements are included in the proposed conditions of approval for the project. Next slide. The site plan includes reconfiguration and expansion of parking areas for students, staff, visitors, and buses, adding a total of 94 new parking spaces adjacent to the proposed bus loop. Parking will be restriped and designed to meet town zoning code standards, ensuring proper dimensions and improved vehicular maneuverability. The bus loop will be relocated near the radio station road entrance and expanded to accommodate up to 36 buses. Additional improvements include expanded and interconnected parking areas with aisles aligned to enhance circulation and site access. Staff supports the proposed parking and circulation improvements as functional and well-designed. Next slide. A traffic impact study was completed to evaluate the effects of the proposed expansion of La Plata High School, including an increase in student capacity from approximately 1,198 to 1,594 students. The study found that while there is an existing congestion during peak arrival and dismissal times, most intersections are expected to continue operating at acceptable levels of service under future conditions. Identified deficiencies are largely related to the background development rather than the school expansion itself. To address on-site conditions, the study recommends improvements such as separating bus and passenger vehicle traffic, modifying access points, and continuing the use of police control during peak periods. An independent review by Mead and Hunt generally agrees with the study's methodology and conclusions, confirming that the findings are sound. However, the review notes that some coordination will be required with other agencies, including Maryland State Highway Administration, particularly at the Radio Station Road and Maryland 488 intersection. The project may require additional, the review further emphasizes that continued use of traffic control personnel is necessary to ensure safe and efficient site operations. Based on the study and independent review, staff supports the proposed circulation and access improvements, subject to coordination with relevant agencies and implementation of the recommended operational measures. These mitigation measures are reflected in the proposed conditions of approval, specifically conditions 28 and 29. Next slide. Staff recommends the Planning Commission adopt the attached draft and Planning Commission resolution approving major site plan MJSP 04-2025 with the suggested conditions of approval incorporated within the draft resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anything to add to that, Director Dooley?
No, ma'am, I think presentation was well done and reflects our analysis.
Before I turn to my fellow commissioners, let me ask the school board representatives if they have anything they want to add, take away.
Yes, thank you. And can you have the slides? Hi there. I'm Ron Okovich, SEI Architects representing Charles County Public Schools. And we have a slideshow to share with you as well.
Sir, can you repeat your last name again?
Ilkovich, Ilkovitch. And we are with S.
Just like it's,
No.
Just like it's. It's the first name that messes people up. Thank you. So we're very excited to share what we've been working on with the school board with you and show the improvement to the school and hopefully a mass improvement to the community here for La Plata High School. Next slide, please. Obviously, La Plata is located centrally here in the county along Radio Station Road on the right. There are a series of other public uses around the building. The Board of Ed being across the street and the Matula Elementary School accessed through a driveway adjacent to the north of La Plata High School. Next slide, please. To the left, we have the existing site plan where you see the existing building footprint on the site. And on the right side is a plan that demonstrates the significant addition that Kinar talked about. And that's about a 75,000 square foot addition that will be phase one of the project, as well as site amenity improvements, just those directly adjacent to building to support the project and improve the safety items that Kinar so eloquently explained in his presentation. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. This is a zoom in of the floor plans. On the left, we can see a project that originally built in 1970 has evolved over time, difficult corridors, classrooms that don't quite meet next generation learning standards, and likewise. And on the right is the proposed plan. And as Kinar explained, it starts with a phase one of the significant addition on the southeast corner. That addition is going to accommodate the types of spaces that are very difficult to renovate in an existing building. So science labs, art labs, career technology education programs that need slightly larger space than the existing building could accommodate will be worked into that addition. That relocation of students into the addition will then allow us to do a phased while occupied renovation, working our way through the existing building and bringing those classrooms up to current standards and those learning spaces to current standards. Next slide, please. We're looking at some significant exterior improvements as well. The building suffers from significant envelope deterioration where we have water infiltration, air infiltration, poor sustainability, and energy management of that project. So as that, we will be reskinning the building and adding a veneer and facade in front of that, which also gives us an opportunity to give the building a presence that it has lacked for years. If you're familiar with the front door, it sits kind of in a low spot on the site and is really almost invisible. So those are things that we're looking to improve, as well as improving the natural lighting within the building. So all the classrooms should have natural light when we're done with this project. So new windows and replacement of existing windows to make this a bright, modern building of the future. Next slide, please. The materials will be masonry wherever you touch it. So the ground floor level will be very durable in masonry, large format masonry at the main entry, and panelized systems up above on the second floor to reduce weight and to maintain water infiltration, to resolve water infiltration challenges. Next slide, please. Inside, we're going to see significant improvements. On the left are images of the current facility today, old green chalkboards, meandering circulation patterns. On the right are images of the future, classrooms with windows to the exterior, natural light and views, collaborative learning environments that promote next generation learning environments that reflect the types of work environment that students will be graduating into will be a significant feature of the new school. So we're very excited about what we're going to bring here. Next slide. Likewise, media center, cafeteria will all be spaces that are improved in this project to, again, be naturally lit and to also serve multiple different types of learning environments and engagements within the school, different group sizes and multi-use of these spaces so that they can be used throughout the school day. Next slide, please. We talked Kinar explained significantly about the site. This is the existing site plan as it is today. Next slide, please. And as noted, there are significant challenges with circulation on site. And the challenges are so significant that, in fact, they spill out onto Radio Station Road. So we have safety challenges within the site that then can be, become safety images out beyond the site. And some of those are diagrammed here. For example, on the bottom diagram, in the enlarged circle, you can see how many traffic patterns cross one another. So when parents come in and then they loop back out to cross back out, they're simultaneously making a left turn, for example, against student traffic coming into the parking lot. So this is a dangerous situation of these traffic crossings. The bus loop, in fact, is used in the morning as a parent drop-off because it's not significant enough, and there's no significant enough stacking area other than the bus loop to stack parents. Next slide, please. Likewise, in the afternoon, there are additional challenges. The buses are leaving simultaneously to the students. You can see on the blow up at the bottom of the screen, that's again a traffic crossing pattern where buses are making a left turn into student traffic coming from the right side. And likewise at the top of the screen where parent drop-off is coming in and interfering with the bus movements coming in and out. I'll add also that there's only room for 29 automobiles to stack in the afternoon, which is not a significant enough amount. Add that to the fact that the circulation patterns interfere with one another, we're not getting adequate flow to move traffic through the site. So those are the challenges that we identified early on that were to be addressed as a part of this project as we're expanding the building. Next slide, please. And here's just some of those images. You can see on the top right, stacking of automobiles in the bus loop because they don't have enough room to stack, and then backing out onto Matula Lane, which is a private driveway in the afternoon, is on the left side image. Next slide, please. Likewise, the bus loop is also inadequate for the PM egress of all the buses, and you can see how they're stacked multiple upon each other. We prefer a situation where kids don't have to cross through the buses to get to their bus door. So we're looking to address that challenge as well. Next slide. So this is the revised proposed addition. As noted before, the new front door is now on the southeast corner, and that creates an entry plaza that collects both the bus loop, the parent drop-off, and the student parking area at an obvious front door location. Next slide. And this is the new resolved traffic pattern. And the goal of the new traffic pattern is twofold. One is to completely segregate the patterns from one another and eliminate all crossing patterns. And you can see here on the bottom in the red, the student have their own ingress and egress driveway that brings them to the student parking lot in the red. The bus loop has its own ingress egress. They come in and they egress without crossing patterns with parents. And parents will come in on Matula Lane at the northwest top of the screen there. And from the point they enter from Matula Lane in, I believe we now have 49 car stacking, which can be multiplied because now it's 2 lanes in one direction and we can double that up. So we can get significant vehicles off the roadway system. But what we've experienced over the years is it's not just the capacity, but the fact that they can continually flow without stop. So that second lane can serve as a bypass lane. If one student didn't come out on time, the parent behind them has picked up and can bypass that car that stopped. So it's 2 lanes in one direction in front of the building to accommodate that. So between the additional capacity, the complete segregation of traffic patterns, and the flow that is going to be created by these movements, we feel that, and our traffic engineer as well feels that we have significantly addressed some of those traffic challenges. It did require relocation and one new ingress egress point on Radio Station Road, which we've already worked through with the county, Radio Station Road being a county road, and they've since approved that ingress egress condition as well. Next slide. And this is just a compilation of the challenges across the top and the revised on the bottom right corner. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions and very excited about getting this project started.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
We are going to go to our commissioners, but this is just an editorial
Certainly.
comment on my part. I am surprised with this being a high school that there's a lot of parent drop-off.
Mhm.
I could see elementary, middle school.
Sure.
So I'm really surprised that it is such a problem that we needed to expand or reroute the space. The other piece I want to add is that this looks like a complete rebuild. I mean, how will this impact learning from 26 to 30?
Interesting that you should ask. So our firm specializes in K through 12 education. We find during phase while occupied projects that test scores in fact go up. The excitement, the kind of learning that can occur around the student, with the students around the construction activities are opportunities for learning. The excitement is something that builds. I'll also add that phase one will be the first addition, and those students after phase one will already be in new accommodations as that phase one comes into play. So that a new addition within the second year, students will be occupying better spaces than they're in today. But phase while occupied is something that is common. And I will also add that Charles County is one of those jurisdictions that does not have a swing school to move kids into to accommodate this.
I mean, back in the dark ages, when I graduated high school, my class was the first class to graduate from a high school, and the push to get it finished was such that there were a lot of construction still going on while we were in the school, and a lot of the space was not usable, and it was a lot of, so the excitement that you say will be there based on studies you've seen. I've lived it. It wasn't that exciting, but fingers crossed that times have changed. Did you want to add something before I turn to the commissioners?
Thank you. For the record, I'm Steve Andritz. I'm the Director of Planning and Construction for Charles County Public Schools. So as Ron was just mentioning, the plan here is to start by building the new space to limit the interruptions to the school. Now that there will be some, but they will look to be coordinated at downtimes, evening work, breaks, wherever they can be to limit those impacts to the students. But create the new space first, move them in, and then start to work on those other pieces. The construction manager at risk that we have hired will coordinate with the school about any issues they have with noise impacts or test days. All of those critical items that we have to keep track of in education will be in the forefront with the contractor. So while we're focused on building the new building, we're also focused on making sure that we are doing as much as we can to limit the impacts to the school.
Are there considerations with respect to virtual learning during some of those, some of the construction? Should it be extensive or very disruptive?
Well, let me say this. As we learned through COVID, virtual learning can be effective, but also cannot. It really depends on how it's implemented and how the students interact with it. Currently, Charles County does not have a virtual plan for education, but I think if things got complicated enough, it would be something they would revisit for a situation. Sure.
I'll pause for right there and then turn to my fellow commissioners, and let me turn to Commissioner Miller. Is there anything you want to?
Good afternoon. I appreciate both briefs. They were very helpful, very informative. I guess my first question before we kind of get into the conditions is kind of procedural. But like, what's the process to ensure that these conditions are met, and what would happen if the conditions after approval aren't satisfactory?
Well, it's when we write conditions, we try to identify specifically what is the condition, what's the requirement, when's it to be done, and how's it to be implemented. So most of the conditions usually referenced back to my position as community development director. My responsibility is to make sure that the conditions follow the project basically, and that there's adequate conditions language in there that allows my department to be able to monitor and to enforce the conditions based on, in this case, the phasing that goes on, making sure that our plan technical consultants are aware of the conditions, that things have to happen before we give them a building permit or prior issuance of a use and occupancy permit. So there's going to be reoccurring inspections that'll be done by planning following the conditions that are adopted by the commission.
Okay, thank you. That helps. Last one before I get in here. Were there any conditions that didn't make the cut that you were kind of on the fence about, that potentially for whatever reason that we should at least be aware of?
No, I think that staff has worked with with these gentlemen and their team and from the school district, and I think we've come to resolution on questions and issues, and I think we're both on the same page with regard to the conditions. So to answer your question, no, there's no additional conditions that staff is recommending. You have the final draft set that was developed today that addressed any lingering questions that the school districts had.
And we talked safety, or we didn't talk safety. We talked kind of disruption and nuisance. As far as students going in and out, what conditions are in place for the traffic to keep that separation from the construction to bus traffic and student traffic?
I'm sorry, was the question
There-
during construction for bus traffic and student traffic?
Yeah, during construction, how do we, address and consider bus traffic, student traffic?
So the phasing plan does consider that as it goes in. And in fact, a lot of that will get implemented fairly early on. The independent driveway for the student loop gets built in the first summer, and that will be available for the first summer. The bus loop, the new bus loop is in the first school year, so that will be available right away after year one. And then the rest of the circulation occurs in phase 3 at the north. That's more the teacher parking lot and the parent loop. But that will come on in increments, and each increment, we have an analysis that improves the situation from previous for each step. And we work that out through with staff, as well as the independent permit reviewer that the town of La Plata has hired.
Okay.
Oh, one more.
Can I add two things? Number one, also want to let you know that there have been meetings with the fire marshal to look at the plans as it results, temporary egresses that are going to have to happen during construction. That was about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
And the phasing plans, as Ron mentioned, incorporate those. The fire marshal has looked at them, met on site, talked about them with the construction manager at risk, and they all seem in line that they're acceptable and everything looks like it's going to work fine. If there turns out to be something during construction that we've got to make an adjustment, we're absolutely going to do that. The other comment I want to make is, since you did ask about safety, all school construction projects require background checks of the people that are going to be working there. They're all required to be identified somehow through numbering systems, which the contractor has to keep track of. There are strict rules on things such as no smoking and no conversating with students and staff. And so there will be a list of things in the safety realm that will be in place while construction is going on for the students and staff as well.
Thank you. Condition 24. The right-of-way agreement, I guess, real quick, who would be liable and responsible for the maintenance for that path before it gets connected to the path along Radio Station Road?
At this, ultimately, the school will maintain it temporarily until the town takes it over, but it's intended to be a town pathway.
Okay. And then the last question, 17, condition 17, Chief of Police to approve the lighting. Is there any consideration? I mean, a lot of these are about, safety for security cameras. Is there any consideration to having that be a condition, or is that outside our realm?
The Chief Norris did look at the site plan early on and did not have any specific conditions or requirements for cameras.
Okay.
The commission can certainly add them to his satisfaction to have a relook if that's something the commission desires to do. But based on the email that Keenan and I received early on, he didn't specifically identify that. But again, it certainly can be added if that's something that the commission wants to see.
Okay.
So I would like to just add to that currently we do have cameras at the school, including parking lots. So there would continue to be that even with the new arrangement.
Okay, thank you.
Before I turn to you, Commissioner Ford, let me just pull the thread a little bit further as it relates to safety. I scribbled on my, are there any?
I have a piggyback on that too.
Okay, are there any safety concerns with respect to linking the middle school with Laurel Springs and because it's open to the public, there are ill-intended people roaming. So are there any concerns? And that goes to what, to my thinking, what Commissioner Miller was saying. Are there cameras, light? I mean, I think having the police chief revisit that would be helpful, but please feel free to chime in and, but let
Yeah.
me go because Vice Chair has, you want to add to that?
I just had a question. How is emergency access protected during peak congestion?
So the emergency access during the arrival dismissal time would be orchestrated through the crossing guards that currently exist. So if there was an emergency situation now
Mhm.
during a arrival dismissal, when those crossing guards are out there, they would stop traffic and let them through.
Okay,
And we are not intending to change having crossing guards even after construction is complete. So
Mhm.
during that process, that would happen
okay,
still.
okay.
And
So-
then can I go back to your question, ma'am, Ms. Banks? I think what you're asking about is with the shared use path
Yes.
that is going to ultimately connect Milton Summers to Laurel Springs.
Yes.
We have similar situations with other schools in Waldorf where we have pathways along Smallwood Drive that run in front of other schools and that the community can use at any time. So it is not an uncommon situation that we have.
But there have been problems.
From time to time, but it usually depends on if there are a destination that people are stopping at. This being a connection that will make its way through from place to place, I don't know that that's going to be as much of an issue. There will be some lighting out along through there. The pathway is not lit per se, but there will be some. But I would venture to say that most of your traffic on that pathway is going to be significantly reduced in the evening and dark hours because it's not easy to traverse. That's just me assuming that. And I don't know if Don or Keenar want to talk about that, but I think you're going to see less people and bicycles and whatever.
Okay, thank you. We will hope for that. Let me go back to you, Commissioner Ford. You had questions, comments?
Yes, I got a lot. So first of all, phase one and A1, are they concurrent?
Yes.
Okay, so do you have a plan of action and milestones that are going to ensure that that construction project is done before the following school year? Because I know phase one is going to be the large amount of construction that you're going to be doing. So I'm assuming that you're going to need to be in and out. So that's the first question.
Yes.
So let's go there. Poland first.
Okay, so as Kinar identified, phase one actually has 5 subphases,
Mhm.
and each one is tied with the construction manager at risk and has a liquidated damages penalty for not meeting that requirement. We will also be monitoring the construction, as will the public school system. We have biweekly meetings and very regular conversations to track that timeline, and they have the school system has hired a construction manager at risk to be fully responsible for those sub goals. Every phase there's 3 primary phases. One is 2 years, 1 year, and 1 year,
Mhm.
and they have multiple sub phases within them. And part of the big opportunity that we have is that the building is unoccupied in the summer.
Exactly.
So those sub phases really allow us to take advantage of time when students not there to do the types of things we can't do while students are in the facility.
Right, because the bulk of the building with the tunnel and all that's going to
Correct.
happen.
And the
Definitely
stairwells,
happen right
and
there. Okay, so
safety items. Yeah.
the next thing is your traffic plan that you have.
Mhm.
Could you go back to the larger one so we can all
Go back to
kind
one
of
slide, please.
So this is the new one. These are completely segregated. So in terms of like emergencies and
Yes.
access to different points of the school, like your south point or your northeast point over here,
Mhm.
or I don't know if it's northeast or south, whatever. So those points that was clean and clear with the fire marshal. But
Yes, sir.
you might want to ask. Did you ask the police
Yes,
department? as
and
well?
they've already approved that in our building permit review.
Okay.
Both the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association guidelines, as well as the International Building Code have been approved.
And the
already.
bounds of your traffic study,
Mhm.
was that with the assumption that you're doing the same let out and or start and end? I'm a parent at Matula,
Yeah, take your
so
time. Yeah.
I live that whole circle every day.
Me too.
So I want to, is that assuming that the time of the high school starting and beginning are the same? There's no changes, so that because
Yes,
we
sir.
already have a traffic jam
Mhm.
at Matula when that happens. So
That was anticipated, yes.
There
okay.
was no plan to change the school hours once this is complete.
Okay. Two last questions. So, we did the Matul, we did the June. So with respect to the path, are we addressing the students that will be walking from Kings Grant, from the one across the street? Agricopia, there we go. I couldn't get to it, but Agricopia, because there is down here where you're yellow, where you have this green dot person human.
Yep.
There is a path that goes across the street to that section, and there's also a path that comes back. But the path that goes to Agricopia is not really there.
Southwest, so to the left side of the screen.
Is to the lower section of the screen.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure. So you see, identified the dot that and the little person there.
Yeah.
The green lines talk about once you get on property, you never cross traffic.
Yeah, I'm tracking that. I'm talking about the actual path that we're adding. So
Okay.
the multi-use path that's going to be going across Radio Station Road right there.
Correct.
So there are two adjacent pathways that would come to it, which is the one that comes across 488 that comes across from Kings Grant up there, and then the Agricopia one comes around the baseball field right there. But there is no real path for that.
So if I could jump in there, the Agricopia plan, if I remember right, and Don and Keenar, please help me, is part of the new plan that Keenar talked about that's going to start in the spring. It will actually, as the current sidewalk path kind of bends around the neighborhood, it's going to stretch in that little patch of woods through our fence and then along the outside edge of the fence where the lacrosse fields are, and then run along that curve and on through. It will cross these entrance points, but what Ron is mentioning, once you cross this first entrance that you see with the red arrows, you then would follow the green path to walk in. So those walking individuals or those biking individuals, say from Agricopia, would be able to take that path through to get to school, would only have one crossing right here at the student lot to get in, to then be able to get into the building.
And the last question, thank you, is the police department ready to put another traffic guard at the bus loop?
That is
Because-
something we will have to work with them on, but clearly we have a plan that has been in place and successful for many years.
Right.
With 2 entrance points and 2 crossing guards. If they agree that there's a third one needed, then they would, or if they believe they can manage it with just the 2, whichever way that goes, we're going to work with them on.
Because that red line, that's existing, right? That's existing?
So the student drop off and the student drop off, so let me start again. The
bus loop is new, correct?
The bus loop exit is
Right.
currently shared with
the
student driver lot.
Yes.
And so they're being separated. And in doing that, that current
Mhm.
driveway is actually pulled south
Mhm.
to where you see it here with the red and green dash line.
Right.
And then the yellow is a new space in between, which is slightly north. That point is slightly north of the existing connection.
So you'll certainly need an intermittent
Potentially,
person there. You would
yes.
certainly need that. Just based by the morning, you definitely will need that. So, all right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Yep.
This was well put together.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Commissioner Will?
All right, I just have a couple small questions. First, I want to say that I am a parent of a child at La Plata High School. And if we miss the bus, and by we, I mean he gets a tardy. Like, we don't even, we're not even messing with that. It is a problem. The parent drop, yes. And I was surprised as well, because I figured with all of the students driving and the busing, it is definitely a problem. I appreciate those improvements as well as the inside, because I've also tried to navigate the inside of the building and thought I was going to have to throw up flares for a rescue. So yeah, it's definitely a problem. I do have some questions about the pedestrian, because right now, obviously, like, there's kids just kind of like walking all over the lawn and that kind of stuff. But with the new paths, is there going to be anything like, and honestly, with the rate that traffic moves right now, I don't know if it's necessary, but like speed bumps or anything like that to try to help with safety of those pedestrians?
Can I jump in with one thing?
Yes.
Currently, there is no walking zone for students. Every
Right.
student in the La Plata High School District is assigned a bus, so there are no walkers. There is a policy that the board has where high schools up to 1.5 miles can have walkers if they have a safe route to school. But currently we do not have that because there are no sidewalks. So once this pedestrian pathway, shared use path gets put in, that is something that can be reevaluated. And it may be
Okay.
a situation where you have walkers, but right now there are none. So the folks that do walk, they have a bus provided for them. So I
Okay.
want to clarify that first off. Your second question was about as they start to walk, what safety improvements? Is that
Yes, like, is there a plan for consideration for those modifications if it becomes a problem? So like speed bumps or, things like that in the.
Sure. The traffic, the civil engineer has provided a plan currently under what's under review that shows all the traffic measures as far as stop signs and islands and curbs and all those things that need to be there. But there is a condition in here that does give the planning director leeway to make adjustments as needed.
That would be condition 25.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
In there, just for the commission's notification, basically says that
Oh, I see.
the applicant
Perfect.
is to provide me with a traffic control plan that would includes stop signs, speed bumps, painted curbs, et cetera. And provide speed reduction mitigation measures prior to the issuance of a use and occupancy permit. For phase one.
If I may add, the intent of the design is the safest way to keep kids safe in traffic is to avoid traffic. And for that reason, the green line identifies the pathways to get to the doors and enter the building without ever crossing traffic. And that's our goal is that safety point.
Last question, is this removing the trailers that are currently on property? Is that kind of part of the intention is to move that around?
As of now, no.
Okay,
There are some alternative programs that do occur at the school. And we are evaluating those. Actually, we've gotten some money recently from the state to potentially do some renovations to some of those. But as of now, going away, no.
go right ahead. I'm actually finished. Thank you.
Just real quick, you said something that kind of sparked my mind. So is the addition of the pedestrian walkway and is that like leading to the reduction of school bus load for the school? Is that a further plan that we're not aware of?
I'll take
Because
that.
if we have, because I mean, I don't want to add something that's going to take away a benefit to our communities, right? Like,
It's just designed for full.
Right. No, right now, as Ron was just mentioning, the bus lot is designed to handle enough buses for that full capacity, that 1594, I believe it is. But again, as is mentioned, the board does have a policy that if there are safe walking zones within a mile and a half, they can put in place a policy to create walking neighborhoods. So that could be a situation, but as of now, the plan is the buses will be provided, but that could be revisited once things are open. And if the community wants to have a walking zone instead of busing, then that's another thing that they can reach out about.
I think it'd be an option rather than a requirement is better.
Vice Chair Hudnall, anything?
Sure, I have a question. I know that our chairwoman asked about school functionings while this construction is going on. So my question kind of piggybacks on that, and I'm sorry if I'm late. But what happens if the phases are delayed or funding shifts? Would that affect the ongoing school at that time?
So with the fact that we're going to start construction on the new addition right now, it's a 2-year duration. The reason we're trying to get started right now this summer is that we would finish in 2 summers. The ideal time for moving students is when they first come back to school. So you make those moves over the summer when the spaces are done. So if there were delays, that delay could result in an entire year delay. So that's why we've been working so diligently with the town, with our traffic engineer, with their traffic consultants to try to get all these things pushed through, because a delay now could delay the project a year. And what we're seeing with costs going in construction, it's easily 5% cost increase, which could put a burden on the budget, could make the project unaffordable. So we really are, we have money coming in. The state right now is locked in to give us money this coming fiscal year. So starting in July, we've seen their 100% funding recommendations, and it is a good number. The county's already committed money. So we are ready to go with construction funding right now.
So no foreseeable delays.
No, and again, with the construction manager at risk, they're on the hook because they are at risk to, once they give us the price, they have got to deliver.
Okay. Going back to traffic here. What is the worst case real world traffic scenario after expansion?
I'm sorry,
After expansion.
After expansion.
the worst case scenario?
Worst case. Because
Well,
I like your diagram here, but I also like playing devil's advocate. What's the worst case real world traffic scenario?
I think probably the applicant's traffic engineer was probably the best person to address that, and followed up by the town's consultant, Mead & Hunt. So maybe we can turn it over to Carl if you're there. If you want to start that conversation.
Yeah, I'm here. This is Carl Wilson from the traffic group. We prepared the traffic impact study for the site. And basically in doing that, what we did was review the existing arrival and dismissal pattern. So we reviewed all the operations going in and out of the site. And what we found is that, there's a lot of conflict at that southern entrance point today with traffic entering and exiting all at that same point, because you have the drop-offs leaving, you have drop-offs arriving, you have students arriving. So there's a lot of conflict going on at that point. In the future, with the separation of the parent pickup drop-off loop from the students and faculty staff that will be staying on site, that's actually going to enhance the operations along the site frontage. So basically what we did was look at the future, running a simulation model to show that the queues will actually be reduced with the police direction staying in place to account for the additional traffic that's there.
Okay. Are there any risks that still haven't been fully mitigated yet?
Sorry.
On site, no, there's not.
Okay. And for you guys? Are there any risks that still haven't been fully mitigated yet?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
We internally have discussed this thoroughly with our designer, with our safety risk manager, with the construction manager at risk. We believe that the risks are known and are assigned as they should be.
Okay. That's all I have.
Thank you. Okay,
All right.
Councilman Gutenberg.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So first I'd like to say thank you for bringing so much information on this project for us here. Our scope as a planning commission is really to evaluate the site plan, right? The exterior site plan of the building, and the fact that you brought, facade renderings, the inside renderings, kind of talked about the things that will satisfy the natural public curiosity around the totality of this project is appreciated, because I think that kind of paints the whole picture of what we're really reviewing here. I think, as a parent myself of a person, I've got 3 kids. One's already through completely La Plata High School. One's currently there, and I got one right in the chalks ready to come in. And I love what you're doing with the site circulation plan. I think the fact that the school has existed there for decades, I think the best ideas come from people in the communities and the spaces. And I know that this obviously is the result of having lived in this space. This plan is very apparent to me that how good this is. And I think, as a parent who's dropping things off, I think some things that have changed since I was a kid too, with the bus ridership and the parents dropping people off. I think since COVID, we still have a large number of people, even though there's been return to work, there's a lot of people still working hybrid. And that changes the dynamic of how many people are doing a run into school to make something easy on their internal family dynamic to get a kid into school. And I think this circulation pattern does great things for that. Another thing that I really am appreciative of in what has been designed into this site plan is when I look at these walking paths of how you get there, and you can see that, in the lower section there, where that is all sidewalk all the way there, the way that new plan is. And that is amazing with how complicated that is over there right now, that's done. And the other thing I really think is forward looking about this plan is that with the way the new bike path is going in, and the way that connects to so many parts of La Plata and developments outside of La Plata that are adjacent enough to this high school is really more than a high school. It is part of our community. That's where we go in the summertime to go. That's our closest local community pool. And I think putting bike racks in there, it's not required by code, but town staff and the school board folks are putting those kinds of features in, is forward looking to the very near future when we have that bike path, and people are going to be using those facilities, I think, in different ways because of the way the off-site improvements that are going to complement what you're doing with this site. So I think all of that is really good. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to you all getting started on this. So thank you for bringing all of this here and giving us all of this detailed information. It's really outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me ask this, Director Dooley and Mr. Johnson, how does this align with our APFO efforts?
Well, right now, our APFO, as you may or may not be aware, the council approved the first reading for it. They will not be subject, of course, to the APFO provisions, but and then we're going to be talking a little bit about traffic here next. But I certainly think that the project, as it's been conditioned and evaluated, certainly is within the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish.
That's what I was looking.
And I would, I would also add, it actually should help the adequate public facilities related to schools, not only for the town, but also for the county, excuse me, because then it's an expansion. And so it does create the opportunity for more students to come in, to have seats, to be educated, and development to go forward.
Good point.
Excellent, excellent. Are there any final comments, thoughts from either?
Where's the football stadium?
It's still existing. It's down in that lower left corner. It's still there.
The new one.
We're focusing our money on the building.
That's another phase they haven't gotten to yet. So,
but we do appreciate the opportunity to be here to talk to you guys and show you all that's gone in, all the really diligent work from our design team, from our architect and our site engineer. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Well, thank you both, and the in the supporting cast. I know some of the questions we asked were not necessarily relevant to the approval, but as parents and citizens of the town of La Plata, it's important to us as well to take into consideration those things. So I appreciate your indulgence and with respect to that. Final round of questions or comments from the commissioners, councilman. So let's entertain a motion then with respect to the recommendation from the planning department. Is there a motion to approve the major site plan for 04-2025 with the suggested conditions of approval incorporated in the most recent draft resolution, and with the addition to go back and consult with the police chief with respect to safety? Did I get that right?
Yeah, point of inquiry on that. Could we establish, I mean, does the La Plata Police Department actually have purview over the conduct of the Board of Education's site security planning? I mean,
well, they're certainly in charge of the law enforcement over the town.
sure. Yeah.
I've drafted out a rough condition on here that I would refer to.
I will listen to that, but what my basic question is if the potential outcome is that we're asking for the police chief to ask if he wants to put cameras at the La Plata High School, I would think that's not a decision we're going to leave to the La Plata police chief. That's going to be between the Board of Education, the school, and the parents on how they want safety be conducted there.
So it's more of a safety and it's more of an analysis, and it could be a recommendation which the board could take or not take. It wouldn't be necessarily a condition of approval.
It's, if you want the chief of police to make recommendations or provide the authority for the chief to require additional mitigation for cameras or whatever, that's up to the commission to determine amongst yourselves. I think you can certainly go either way with it. The chief of police did look at the site plans I mentioned earlier on. He did not identify any specific issues with it, so we did not incorporate any specific conditions with regard to cameras or anything else. The thing we did not talk about was specifically about lighting, so staff added that in there. If we want to add a condition, just as to Councilman Gutenberg's comment, we can add, I would suggest adding.
Mr. Dooley, my comment is not that I'm advocating for a new condition. My comment is this even conditionable? And maybe Mr. Andritz could speak to that.
Because it's a site plan on there, I think it's probably borderline, to be honest with you. I think that the chief could certainly make some recommendations, but the purpose technically of the site plan is to review the platting of the property with the revisions to the site and so forth.
Sure.
It's not unusual for the chief of police or any EMS to provide recommendations.
Understood, but he's already reviewed it.
Yes.
And he did not make that recommendation.
Yes.
So I'm not seeing the need. And what I still would like to do is hear from Mr. Andritz if this is even.
Sure.
Yeah.
The two other points I want to add, we do have a director of school safety and security who works for Charles County Public Schools, who is a former Charles County deputy, who was involved as part of the design review process, as were the instructional specialists who deal with science and English and everyone from maintenance. We go through these processes as we progress the design. So there were comments that did come from them. Typically they are, hey, we need extra cameras for coverage in these areas, usually focusing on the building. But if there are deficiencies outside, they bring them up. But the comments that came from them have already been incorporated into the design. That's number one. And number two, all high schools have a full-time SRO, a school resource officer. So you have that person on staff who's there all the time the school function is going on.
I appreciate that answer. And then what I'll say to my fellow commissioners then is that we've been presented no information here tonight to evaluate school safety in that way. I think it is outside of our scope, and I think it is a reach. And I think that if the school board or the school safety officers have determined that they would need something like that, they can bolt cameras virtually anywhere. I don't think we have to change site design to do that, nor do I think it's reasonable to delay our evaluation of this significant amount of work and in very good conditions that are here over that would be my view.
Thank you. Director Dooley, you said you scribbled a thought with respect to what that condition.
Well, it was basically the tenor of the condition was that the chief of police shall review the safety features such as for the high school and make their recommendations to the applicant prior to the issuance of use and occupancy permit. So it was more of an advisory condition. But to Council Gutenberg's point, it's and learning what I just did here, it's probably unnecessary. I agree at this point.
So let me pull my fellow commissioners. Commissioner Miller.
I think I have a point of clarity just to clear it up. Potentially the security cameras is not within this.
Well, if I could, point of order though, that we were just asked a question by the chair. She's polling us on that question, and I fear that if you're going to introduce another scenario here, that makes it more confusing for all of us to poll on the thing we just talked about. So what I would ask the chair is for efficiency of the thing we just discussed, if we could poll ourselves on that, because I feel like you're adding a nuance that we could take another poll after that, is if that's acceptable? Or do you think it's like directly linked to what we're saying?
Right now, we are polling whether we want to add the security camera condition to this approval tonight. Then I'll save my point of clarity for after this.
Okay.
So can you repeat the?
Yeah, so what say you with respect to the additional condition?
No.
Commissioner Ford, blanking on the name.
No.
Commissioner Rail,
No.
Vice Chair Hudnall,
No.
I know you're,
I'm a no. Yeah, thank you.
okay.
Okay.
I'll stand alone as a yes, but the noes have it. And so let me turn back to you, Commissioner Miller. You want to clarify what your original,
Yeah, I think sometimes we do, the discussion does venture outside of the purview of this commission. So then I guess if security cameras could potentially not be within our purview, would some of these other conditions be of quite, like condition 17 for the lighting, is that outside of zoning?
If I could, I mean, we often condition, we look at lighting plans as part of the site plan. Those are specifically part of it. And I think the staff report itself is the recommendation on the agreed conditions between all parties. So by definition, I think those are within scope as agreed by all members.
Chair, if I could add to that too, that we do
Yes.
actually have a lighting ordinance in our code, so we want to make sure that that's properly enforced.
Okay, thank you. That helps. I was going to say, because the only difference is that the staff didn't recommend that condition.
all right, so let's go back to the motion with respect to approval for the major site plan for 2025 with the suggested conditions of approval as incorporated with this most recent draft resolution. Is there a motion?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would make a motion that we approve the site plan as presented with the conditions in the staff report.
Is there a second?
I was second.
Commissioner Miller, what say you?
Aye.
Commissioner, oh, you don't vote Commissioner Ford. Commissioner Will,
Aye.
Vice Chair Hudnall,
Aye.
Councilman Gutenberg.
Aye.
I am an aye as well. The motion passes. Major site plan is approved.
Thank you all.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate your indulgence again. Director Dooley? Director Dooley, I'm going to turn to you
Yes, ma'am.
for our next item, which is the APFO. Specifically, section 191.88
This,
roads.
I'll wait for the correct PowerPoint to come up here. While we're waiting for that, I'll just introduce this. This is this was the portion of the APFO that we bifurcated from the prior text amendment. So, oh, here we go. So we're ready to present that to the commission tonight. And next slide, I'll give you a little background on this, which might be slightly redundant for you all, but for the public's edification. In September of 2025, the town council sought to ensure adequate public infrastructure for new development in the town. The APFO standards for water, sewer, school seating capacity were previously developed, reviewed, and recommended by the commission to the town council on April 7th under prior zoning text amendment 01/2026. The town council subsequently approved the first reading to adopt proposed ordinance as recommended by the commission at the end of last month, April 28th. The original road section of the APFO as I mentioned, was decoupled or bifurcated from zoning text amendment 01/2026 to enable staff to recruit the traffic engineering services to redraft and improve upon the original APFO language for roads. Brutus and Associates, or BIA, was selected and contracted for this effort, and Puskar Carr from BAI, who helped primarily was the author for this, is here to answer questions. Carrying on, the revised draft APFO for roads is now ready for Planning Commission review tonight under zoning text amendment 02-2026. Next slide. Staff has incorporated prior commission and public feedback into the revised APFO provisions for roads. In general, the current provisions overall overarching provide for regulations to modernize transportation impact evaluation and methodology. It sets APFO road standards to align with state and county best practices and standards. It aligns with APFO principles with National Center for Smart Growth's 2025 Adequate Public Facilities Ordinances in Maryland. A summary of the detailed draft provisions for roads that's in the APFO as recommended by BAI and staff are as follows. And I'll just kind of go through here real quick on the next slide to address some of those, the big picture items here. So under draft section 191.87C, trip generation threshold, it establishes a trigger for requiring a traffic impact study, or TIS. The TIS required for developments is required for 50 or more peak hour vehicular trips during any morning or evening study period. And the threshold aligns with common Maryland jurisdictional standards. Next slide. Section 191.88 roads. A proposed development must maintain a required level of service. The APFO applies to projects, again, generating 50 or more peak vehicular trips. All traffic impact studies will require the Highway Safety Capacity Manual, or HCM, analysis for intersection study areas. Level of service, or LOS, will be based on vehicular delay, not traffic volume counts or critical lane volumes, known as CLVs. It also, minimum level of service for local, state, and county roads will be has been revised to as follows. For Tanala Plata roads, that minimum level of service threshold is C. And we're retaining the existing state and road thresholds by the county and the state, which for the county is level of service D, and for the state, or SHA, is level of service E. Traffic mitigation will be required where development incrementally worsens existing or acceptable background traffic conditions established by the local, county, and state LOS standards that I just described. Next slide, please. Section 191.88 proposed mitigation options include pro rata cost share escrow contributions or alternative road improvements for mitigation. Specifically, when mitigation is necessary, all road mitigation projects must be prioritized in the following order: safety, emergency access, pedestrian, bicycle, or complete streets, and lastly, vehicular capacity. A project must be denied if it cannot provide feasible mitigation. The town will require an adequate public facilities study, or APFS, for all project submissions when traffic counts are expected to meet or exceed 50 or more peak hour vehicular trips during AM and PM periods. And that's outside of the water and sewer APFO requirements that we've adopted. Next slide, please. Section 191.93F. The APFO study requirements should be an O in there. First, it defines traffic study area for a traffic study impact, or TIS. It includes the nearest two signalized arterial intersections from a proposed development's principal driveways in each direction. It includes intersections within 1.5 miles receiving 50 or more peak hour vehicular trips during AM and PM hours. It's required when additional intersections deemed appropriate by the planning director, such as projects with a very high trip generation, unusual traffic patterns, or a unique or unusual land use type that may generate more than normal traffic levels. And there's also provision for anti-piecemealing so that developers cannot avoid the 50 or more vehicular trip generation threshold by submitting multiple or small projects. Next slide, please. Section 191.94F establishes an escrow fund. The escrow in the draft ordinance, this creates a town-managed transportation improvement escrow fund for in lieu fees. It collects proportional developer mitigation contributions for singular transportation improvements or for larger road improvements serving multiple areas or streets or roads. The road improvement construction is proposed to be triggered when 50% funding is collected or secured for specific transportation mitigation projects. That number, of course, could be raised or lowered at the commission's discretion, but staff is recommending at least 50%. And then lastly, mitigation in lieu fees are to be collected by the town prior to the issuance of building permits when mitigation construction is not planned as part of the approved development. So this is physical construction. Next slide. Section 191.96B, the APFO study standards. All traffic impact studies or TISs must follow the highway capacity manual methodology, which includes traffic data, must use the most current town approved counts. Traffic counts must not be more than 2 years old to keep it relevant. Some land uses like restaurants or religious facilities, entertainment venues will require weekend traffic analysis because the volume of traffic is fundamentally generated on weekends rather than weekdays. Religious facilities are probably the best example of that. And then lastly, the planning director must approve the scope of work for each traffic impact study. Next slide. So tonight, staff's recommendations and for the commission's reference, the next steps for the zoning text amendment is that to ask the planning commission to provide its feedback on the draft APFO for roads tonight. Staff and BAI will revise the draft APFO text according to the commission's directions or comments. And it will also be reviewed by the town attorney for the final draft to incorporate the commission's considerations and comments. After that, a public hearing will be set for the next regularly scheduled planning commission meeting with commission consent for the zoning text amendment. That could be as early as next month, June 2nd. Once the commission has taken action on zoning text amendment 0226, it will be forwarded to the town council for consideration under de novo public hearing for final action, similar to the zoning text amendment 01/2026 that we recently did. And with that, that concludes my overview presentation of the draft APFO for roads. As I mentioned, Pascal Carr from Brutus and Associates is here. He can going to rely on him tonight to answer some of the technical questions that the commission has, but we're both here to answer questions for you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Dooley. I actually found this to be actually a easy read. I think the work that we did with the other parts of the APFO helped a lot in being able to go through the road section of it. I just had one question with respect to there's an appeal process. There's no explicit timeline built in for the appeal process.
For the appeal process for, I'm not sure, what are you referring to specifically?
So I think I was trying to find it in the document. in section G, there's the developers. Let me circle back. I'll find it specifically for you and we can talk about it
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
around. Let me go to you, Councilman Gutenberg. So do you have any thoughts, comments that
Yeah.
you want to add to the
Sure.
review of this?
Sure. One thing that was sticking out to me, a couple of questions. On the scope of the traffic study, that's a thing we've talked about a few times in previous reviews over the past year in my tenure here. When we say all intersections within 1.5 miles that would receive 50 or more peak hours, does that mean in the scope of a traffic study required by this new zoning change would be that is it a 1.5 mile radius, all intersections within a 1.5 mile radius, or is it 1.5 road miles away from the planned site?
Mr. Carr, can you respond to Commissioner Gutenberg's comment what the intent was?
Sure. This is Pushkar Kaur with Brutus and Associates. I am a professional engineer licensed in Maryland, and I'm also a professional traffic operations engineer. So the intent here with the 1.5 miles, as you said, it's the radius from the driveway access to the or entrance to the business or the development. So this is just like a baseline. The planning director during the scoping process, if we identify certain intersections, maybe receiving a larger share of the new trips, we may require additional intersections as we discussed during the scoping meeting, and that would be codified at that point in the scoping document, which will be used to develop the TIS.
And would that be true? And is it typical then for that to be the area scope, regardless of the size of the development? So if we have a small development going in, it's putting in 5 houses, same standard as if a development's going in that's putting in 500 houses.
So the 50 peak hour trips is your sort of first cutoff. So a lot of smaller developments will not meet that requirement and will not require a TIS. Once you go past that, then yes, the larger developments might require additional studies or additional intersections. A smaller might not as many. So that will be discussed as case by case.
Okay, if I could, what I was really keying in on is does the radius, the area of it change based on the size of the development within this code?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, it may. If it is a critical intersection is going to receive 50 or more peak hour trips as a result of this development, then that intersection may be included in the study based on the recommendation from planning director.
Does the peak hour trips or the size of the development change the 1.5 mile radius scope?
Yes.
It does. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll look at that language more closely. So that's and then that's standard practice. I take it, right? Like that is a common feature of this kind of ordinance.
Correct.
Okay, understood. Then the other question, Mr. Dooley, and you can decide who this is more appropriate to go to, but so in understanding the level of services, I understand them to be what they are based on whether it's a town-owned road, state, or county. And the state and the county already have set levels of service on those roads. The town has not had a standard that is new. We're putting it there. What I'm curious to understand from a standpoint of what is our intent and in this is how are we navigating the complexities of fees and proportional project costs in the context of these projects could be multi-jurisdictional. And when we talked about this back in January, we talked about with Mr. Stevens, that whole of government concept. And I'm wondering how much of that concept is in the code and how much of it is stuff we have to do outside of code as policy and just practices between administrative staff.
I think you really kind of hit on it. We can only regulate the roads that the town of La Plata control. Beyond that is really about intergovernment cooperation and working together. As we did, like with the prior project, there was a condition that basically said that, hey, the applicant shall identify to SHA or the county or whomever it is, if it's their road, what the traffic impacts were to them, and provide a condition that basically, hey, you need to try to work with them to the county or the state, whoever controls the road, to help try to facilitate improvements to their roads. But there's nothing that we can ultimately hold those other agencies accountable for. And so it's an intergovernmental coordination and playing nice, I guess, to try to get road improvements that may belong to other agencies, but are ultimately going to benefit the town. So it becomes more of a policy related issue to try to be proactive and identify these areas that require mitigation that are outside of our jurisdictional control.
Okay, and then I think just one more question and then an ask. So the question is, with how we navigate the various levels and the collection of those fees, if we are, maybe I'm just going to skip right to the ask actually. So if in code we aren't going to be able to, I think, solve in code the way we collect funding. So the ask would be is when we come back together at the next meeting, could we get some concepts from town staff of how they see those other pieces of policy that have to be paired with this code in order to achieve some of the outcomes we want to achieve on an intergovernmental kind of standpoint? And the reason why I want to know that is, and now I'm remembering my question that I lost my train of thought on. The question really was, so in application of this code, when we trigger these the adequate facilities studies, which once this is all adopted, this would be part of that. If road level, if level of service of a county road, let's say that is at D drops to an E, and then we say we can't have that development come in, that neighborhood can't be built, on the condition that the county has to fix that road. How does the linkage of that get connected with action on the government side? Excuse me, on the county government side?
I understand
Okay.
the question. It's something I'd like to think about. Maybe Mr. Carr, do you have some past experience with how other agencies may address the question that Councilman Gutenberg is asking?
Yes, my experience has been with primarily with Baltimore County and Harford County. So when a development project comes in and I represent State Highway as a consultant there. So when a mitigation is identified as a required outcome of a TIS, typically State Highway might require, like, for example, construction of a sidewalk or signalization of an unsignalized intersection, roadway widening, so forth. There will be an agreement between the county and the state as far as what those mitigations need to be. So that is done through correspondence between the state and the county. And if in case of a town like a town of Bel Air or similar towns, what they would do is they will also be part of those correspondences. So once the mitigation is all agreed upon, then the developer usually would be responsible for constructing them if they are within the right of way of other state highway or county or the town. So typically that's what it is done. And then in some cases, in the mitigation is not feasible as to be included as part of the development, they could pay a fee in lieu, and usually that money is then utilized to fund a project. Like, for example, sometimes the development might just submit a escrow funds or some kind of funding arrangement. The town or the county will hold on to that money, and they will then provide a 10% or 20% match towards the capital improvement project using that funding. And State Highway will then be the agency that ultimately designs and constructs the project. So that is the typical that I am used to seeing. And I think it probably be similar here as well. So when you have a project in, let's say a roadway is impacted, that is a state highway roadway, a state highway either will require the development to mitigate that. That would be the option number one. Option number two would be to pay a fee in lieu. And that money is usually held by the state, not the town or the county. So my recommendation would be to have some baseline coordination with the state and the county on this particular matter. If we go in this direction of establishing an escrow fund to clarify who will be responsible for holding on to those funds and how those funds will be utilized. If that can be done, then it can be definitely part of the APFO and part of the town's policies.
Thank you.
as we recommend.
Thank you. That was very clear. That's exactly what I was wanting to hear. An example like that makes perfect sense to me. And that really is what I was looking for to hear from you, Mr. Dooley. Next time maybe is that we get some descriptions of like what we might need to do. And that I think that primes the pump for the council and the town manager to kind of have those conversations.
Yeah, I think that's something we need to incorporate within the draft ordinance. So there's policy direction on what needs to happen. And maybe Mr. Card, just to kind of follow up. So what it sounds like then that possibly that the town may enter into some sort of larger memorandum of understanding with county and the SHA for mitigation measures when a town project affects county roads in terms of the coordination efforts are already there and in place. Is that fair?
Yes, precisely. I think if you can do like a master memorandum of agreement sort of thing like that, spells it out like exactly how that escrow fund is collected and how is it then incorporated into what we are recommending a CIP program for the town, and how then town prioritizes projects and implements it within the corporate limits of the town. So I think that is something that I have seen done in other jurisdictions and can be done for La Plata as well.
Based on that, clearly to put together an MOU out in the state, it's going to take a little bit more time than faster, but I think we can at least provide some tacit language in there that town needs to develop something that requires it by code, and then you can whether we back and we make that modification, the ordinance that lays it out more explicitly and develop this potential concept, or if there's I didn't need to turn it on. And so we have some language, at least in the interim, to use that directs the town to go out and solicit the MOUs with the county and the state based on Mr. Carr's experience, so that we get that relationship built into our processing.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Hundle, anything?
No questions.
Commissioner Will?
I do have a couple. One of my biggest things was about the mitigation between the town, the state, and the county. So I think we've just kind of started that conversation. But for my purposes of understanding, a vehicle trip is there and back, correct?
Mr. Carr?
Can you clarify the question again? Sorry, I
Yes.
missed that
So I'm
part.
just looking to see what constitutes as a vehicle trip. Is it is it one like leaving and coming back? Is it considered like a round trip or just one way?
Each trip is the trip generation is basically the trips that are incoming into the development. And obviously those trips also going to be returning to where they came from. So so in the like depending on which peak it is, if the development generates more trips during the morning, you will see more trips coming into the development in the morning and then leaving less in the afternoon. So the
Mr.
same
Carr-
trips are just to simplify it, like if you look at each study intersection, we are only interested is what's happening at an intersection level, and so we're accounting any trips that are passing through that intersection as a result of that new development.
So just for my own edification, how do you judge if a car is going to return through the same intersection? Or do you? Or is that an
Yes.
assumption?
Yes, it is a part of the traffic impact study. So the traffic impact study is based on a transportation planning model. So it has trip generation, then trip distribution, traffic assignment, and mode choice. Trip distribution takes care of the direction of travel, like so basically where they're coming from and where they're going back. Trip generation is simply the number of trips that it's going to generate. And then traffic assignment is then which road they're going to take, or they're going to go through an intersection or turn left or turn right, that kind of assignment. And then more choices whether they're going to come in as a vehicle or as a pedestrian or bicyclist, that or transit.
So if I leave my driveway and I go through an intersection, to Commissioner Wales' comment, that would basically, we're assuming that when a car leaves your driveway, somebody's driveway apron, that they're going to generate 2 trips from at the real basic level.
Correct. Yes. So if you're going somewhere, you have to obviously return back to your home. So
Okay, understood.
so you're generating two travel trips to and from. Yep.
Okay, so in just reading this, I see this establishes a clear threshold also used in other Maryland jurisdictions. So the 50 is standard. Then to me, sometimes it feels a little bit low. That's the only reason why I was asking, like, what constitutes a trip?
It's actually we have been using in the past 35.
Okay.
So this is actually bumping it up.
Okay.
It does vary from jurisdiction, but like for example, I know Charles County does use that standard, and there's some other agencies that have a similar or the same standard.
Okay.
This one, the 50 is coming directly from the state traffic impact study guideline. And I just want to clarify, it's not 50 trips for the development, it's 50 new trips. Sorry, it's not 50 new trips, but it is 50 trips for the development. So sometimes the developer would argue that there is an existing development and they're just redeveloping it and they're not adding 50 trips. So it's 50 trips, not 50 new trips.
Understood. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Commissioner Ford?
Two points of clarification. So from what I'm hearing, 50 trips per hour is 25 cars traversing an intersection per hour.
Mr. Carr?
So like I tried to simplify it before. So 50, if you're looking at traffic counts at an intersection, the 50 trips will translate into 50 vehicular movements. So whether they're going to the development or coming back, they're passing through that intersection, 50 okay. Total trips. Yep.
Okay, understood. We used in the mitigation section, you use developer and development together interchangeably, and development would assume that is in the past. So I think we need to be really clear that we're talking about future developments or future from developers, right? because,
we can relook at that to make sure it's clear.
yeah, and because that cost share can only happen, there's nothing that would bound a development that finally, that in its, after it's constructed, that violates this,
We
you
can
know.
clarify as new development
yeah. Okay,
in there to, does that satisfy your concern
think so, yeah.
broadly?
Probably. It's just, it was used interchangeably a lot. And sometimes if you're using development, that is a past tense. So
Understood. Yeah,
Yeah.
good point.
that's all.
Commissioner Miller?
I just want to go back to the 1.5 mile radius real quick. So the 1.5 mile radius can expand if it meets specific defined criteria. I forget what it was, but I guess it expands to what? So it's your discretion to say whether it's 1.7 or 2 or 5, or do we need to kind of better define like a tiered mile expansion for that radius, if that made sense?
I'll let Mr. Carr comment on that first. I have my own initial thoughts, but I'd like to hear what Mr. Carr thinks.
Yes, so I think it needs to be it's a balanced approach. So you obviously, if you add a lot of study intersections, it becomes a humongous traffic impact study, and ultimately that may not give you the mitigation or may not give you the outcome that you are looking for. So when we do the scoping process, and going to go through the scoping process for a new traffic impact study, we're looking at what are the critical intersections that would be mostly affected by this new development. So we kind of know how many trips it is going to generate. And then we also know around the study area which intersections are critical in terms of maybe they are already at a poor level of service, or maybe there are some operational concerns. So we can include it like that. I think if you go too far out from the development, it just becomes then unmanageable in terms of what you want to study. The other point, strictly from a traffic engineering point of view, if you're the arterial intersections that are closest to the development operates well, it is unlikely. It's less likely, I would say, that intersections that are much farther away from the development would be affected as much as the ones that are closer to it. The ones that are critical. Because it starts to get diluted, right? The farther you go from the development, because traffic gets dispersed. So it's that balancing act. I think that 1.5 mile is the sort of the basis that we wanted to establish to kind of provide some consistency between studies, so that let's say similar studies with similar number of trips generated, there is some consistency. So you don't see one developer being asked to study 5 intersections, another developer for the same type of development being asked to study 10 intersections. So that was the intent of the 1.5. But the earlier question I think I answered was, what if it's a larger development? Do you still stick to the 1.5? And the answer was no. In that case, probably we want to go study a few more critical intersections because the extent of the impacts and so forth.
So, Mr. Carr, how would you feel about if we slightly redrafted this from your professional standpoint to say something like I'm reading from that section, to say something like all intersections within 1.5 miles or as deemed necessary by the director of planning,
Yes.
et cetera, so that if there's unique situations or that 1.5 miles just doesn't make sense, or to Mr. Carr's point, you have some unique development that, geez, 1.5 miles seems like a lot, but maybe we need to go out a little bit further for various reasons. There's a little bit of flexibility built into it. I'm posing that as a question.
Could there be a risk or something with the developer. If I'm not sure, this might not even need to come up very frequently, but I guess to protect you and the town, if we go beyond 1.5 and it's arbitrary, I mean, we can say there's reasons for it, but if you're just picking a number based on what you think, and then the developer is like, well, I disagree with that. That's not what the code says. But if it's at your discretion and that's fine, then
It would clearly, there has to be a nexus for what we're at, for what myself as a director would be asking for. I can't ask for something where there's no logical reason for it. So, and typically, these types of projects are going to be, the scope of work is going to be identified through traffic consultants that either the town hires, as well as an applicant's traffic engineer. So they're going to work that out in terms of what that appropriate number is. I think Mr. Carr's point is well taken, that it provides, the 1.5 provides at least a basis. And if we add a little bit of flexibility to your point, that I think we can get there without any heartburn.
okay, thank you. The other question I have, priority hierarchy. It's safety, emergency vehicles, pedestrian, biking, and then vehicle capacity. I'm trying to imagine a scenario where you meet the safety, emergency vehicle, and the pedestrian and biking, but in order to meet the level of service for the vehicle capacity, you degrade the top 3 priorities. I guess kind of if you can speak on what takes precedent, or do all 3 or all 4 need to be met, or if some are met or some not met. I think that's the only scenario I can think of that made sense.
Mr. Carr, can you address? I think it's a good question.
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. So the thought process behind those 4 priorities were, centered on the complete streets principles, right? So what we prioritize more than something else. It's not to undermine the importance of vehicular operations. It's just saying that the safety should be the highest priority. Emergency access to provide the emergency response is the second highest priority. And then the equity and accessibility for other modes, which is essential for a town or a city, is the next highest priority, and then the vehicular operation. So to answer your question, of course, if a intersection is degrading a level of service from D to E or whatever the criteria that we have established, then there is a mitigation required to address that situation, because it is directly happening as a result of that development. And so, but what kind of mitigation? So it may not be a widening of the intersection to provide additional capacity, but it might be, providing maybe in lieu funding that can be utilized by the town to make priority improvements for another project that's maybe lacking funding for like safety or emergency access. I think that was the thought process there, that provide a little bit more flexibility to the town in terms of how to prioritize capital improvement projects and how to utilize the funding that is available to mitigate the overall impact from developments, not specific to one single development, but as a result of continued developments within the town.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was just trying to imagine, like, if you need to meet a level of service by widening a road, that's going to affect your pedestrian and biking and safety. So I guess it's more of kind of an art, and we'll have to work through case by case.
I think what Mr. Carr has drafted is basically allows for the town to at least to have awareness that there are other issues that need to be considered beyond vehicular capacity for the road, where we can get other improvements, for example, in a lieu fee, or we're improving other aspects. We're creating more pedestrian or bike trails or other forms of transportation as a way of taking away vehicular trips off the street on the assumption that the people, if they're given alternatives, they will use them other than their car.
That makes sense. Thank you. My last quick question, I think I read it right. Construction is triggered once 50% of the project cost is collected in escrow.
Mhm.
When would the other 50% be due?
Well, as I mentioned, this is something that was that Mr. Carr drafted, and I'll let him speak to it. That could be adjusted accordingly, but the intent was to provide enough money to at least get started on something rather than waiting for 100%. You could use some of that money to at least maybe do a smaller project that ultimately will lead up to that larger project you're trying to mitigate. So it becomes an incremental improvement to the overall larger mitigation that you're trying to address.
Okay.
Mr. Carr, is that correct?
Yeah, I actually, when I wrote it, I forgot exactly what was the thought process, but I think it has two parts. One is if you have secured enough funding or escrow funding from a development or a number of developments within the town, maybe you can start a phase of that project. Means, maybe you could start the planning and concept development for that project, or maybe the preliminary engineering design of that project. You may not have the entire funding for construction. And the thought process there was that maybe we have enough matching funds that can be contributed to a county CIP project or an SHA, capital improvement project. And then the rest of the construction funding may come from somebody else. That was one part. And the second part was maybe we're talking about a large development that will be built over multiple phases. And so, the phase one gets built. It's not the entire thing, but maybe they have already contributed enough funding so that some of the mitigation, maybe the low-hanging fruit type stuff can be done. While maybe a few years it'll take for them to complete their entire project, and they will continue to contribute and make improvements as necessary. So it can be phased that way. Just want to mention one thing I forgot to mention last time. There was a lot of the times the development is constrained by what they can improve in terms of intersection capacity or roadway capacity. So they have direct control over their frontage. But if, let's say, a downstream intersection requires additional capacity, they will not be able to acquire right of way to widen the road, especially in a town like La Plata. So they may come back and say, yes, we understand it is needed, but it's not feasible. And we need to think about that situation. And maybe that would be a good example of when they can contribute a fee in lieu, and that money then can be utilized by the town and the county and the SHA to make a larger scale improvement, like intersection improvement project.
And what the other possibilities, we could soften this a little bit to say that road improvement construction is proposed to be triggered when 50% of funding is collected. What we can say is that if the commission wants to go down, use this language, is to say that it may be triggered, so that the town has a little more flexibility on when they actually want to trigger the improvement. But that's just a thought.
Would the town ever consider using capital improvement funds to temporarily support that funding if they weren't able to reach the 50%?
Well, the money could be potentially rolled into that as part of a CIP project if the council so desire to do that, of course.
Okay. No other questions?
We keep talking about the 50%, but I didn't see where 50% of what, right? Like, where are these projects that Like what's going to be the basis of estimate for the projects that you're funding sharing the cost with, right?
Puskar, do you want to address that first?
Yeah, it's one of the tough, probably the most difficult part to calculate, how much a mitigation would cost. So the first part of that is to agree on what mitigation needs to happen, right? So once that is identified, then either the traffic engineer hired by the town can create an independent cost estimate for that. That would be one approach. And that could use the standard cost estimating procedure that the state highway follows. And then the other approach would be to generate a CIP program, which what we are recommending the town should do. And then you would have a assessment of your needs. So that will also require a traffic engineering study throughout the town, and we will have an idea of what current intersections and roadway conditions are. So we would know what improvements are needed at those intersections or roadways on maybe a 2-year or 3-year or 4-year cycle. So that will generate a program of needs or database of projects sort of that the town can maintain. And so that estimate can then be used to estimate the cost of the mitigation that is needed.
To add to that for the commission information as well, one of the couple things Mr. Carr has pointed out, rightfully so, that this is really the basis for getting our traffic standards where we want them, but ultimately the next phase of this is really going to be developing an implementation policy for the traffic, similar to what Charles County already has or other agencies. So issues like that you're bringing up, Commissioner Ford, are addressed within those documents where we start defining and refining how we're going to really interpret and implement some of this language that we're putting in here. It could possibly include as well, we talked a little bit earlier about intergovernmental coordination between other agents versus SHA and the county for fees and road improvements and how we have that relationship. That's something that could be put into an implementation ordinance for the actual details. We're also, the town's also going to need to engage in having traffic engineer consultants available on call to assist the planning department with reviewing these traffic studies and providing recommendations. The planning department, while we certainly have some knowledge of traffic engineering, but some of the real basic stuff, some of the technical stuff is we don't have that skill set, and as well as other types of planning related needs that we have on call a variety of consultants for everything from landscaping to other engineering services. And this is one that we would want to add to that as part of the implementation of this ordinance and any implementation ordinance for the APFO itself. So my point is this will set that the basis of our traffic implementation policies and guidelines to start stepping up and getting everything that we need in place to be able to review in a very logical and consistent manner by having these other documents in place and consultants in place right after we get the APFO adopted. It's something I'm looking at right now. So planning ahead.
Yeah, and if I could say, one of the things that we talked about in January about directly related to this and capital improvement plans is that you, Mr. Dooley, pointed out one of the problems is that as you're collecting funds for a scoped project that would result from a study, an adequacy study for roads, is that in many cases, as we know, making changes to roads is a many-year timeline to get there. And collecting fees in 2026 for a project that you're going to execute in 2031 is a very different scenario from a cost perspective, to your point. So what we had talked about was building our capital improvement plans with that context in mind and adjusting for, the inflationary costs at the time of expected execution. So you can build those things into a capital improvement plan. And that this, I think, is an example from talking to Mr. Stevens, the town manager, is that that's something we would execute along with this. We would pair that practice with this outside of code. And that's how I think we would address that. And I'm also assuming when you say collect 50% up front, my assumption in reading that is that the other part would be part of a condition, and that's where it would be documented as to the timing. So I think those are great questions, and that's what sets the stage for that, I believe.
Yeah, it's collecting the pro rata share for that development. And there may be other developments that come in that they're going to pay their pro rata share for that same improvement within the same area. And so that you're right, it does absolutely takes time, and the costs do continue to increase. And so one of the things that the town and the department is going to have to be very much aware of is the improvements, identifying the improvements that we need and prioritizing them, and then using mitigation money to actually execute some of those priority projects, whether through grants or with or through capital improvement projects that are approved by the council or directed by the council to get there. It's not, unfortunately, it's not just an overnight. We approve a project, they go out and they mitigate it, and we're good to go in 6 months. Some of this stuff takes time, and it's more complicated because you have other agencies that you have to deal with as well, because we don't control all of our roads.
Absolutely.
But if we have something in place, we're absolutely starting to build on this to get our arms around this, which is the town has not really done in the past, and we're solving that problem.
So just to wrap this up, I do have one comment circling back where I started. And I think this is something that can be captured in a subsequent policy piece, not necessarily in this document, but I was looking at C1G where it talked about the peer review, and you touched on it just a minute ago, Director Dooley, about having an independent
Consultant.
engineer look at. So my question is around, as it is written now, it seems very ambiguous and almost very subjective. I'm wondering, and this again could be something that is more of a policy as opposed to being in the ordinance itself, but are there some more objective criteria that can be incorporated with respect to when that is triggered, so that the developer will know, one, to look out for those triggers, or two, this is clearly why we're going to move forward with this additional review. And the other piece of it is there any thoughts around putting a cost cap or at least some reasonable cost language in the ordinance? And I got one more follow-up. And then the appeal process is where I started. Is there an opportunity to appeal any of this subsequent review?
So let me start backwards. Any direction or formal determination made by myself as the director, the appeal process would be through the Board of Appeals. That's the process that we have codified. As far as putting a cap on this, what we have on our latest version that's going to go into place on July 1st is there's a full cost recovery. So we're basically charging the applicant for whatever the cost is for that peer review, plus 3% for administrative costs. I believe that's how the treasurer has it set up right now. So it sort of, it is what it is. From my perspective, I think the developer should be paying their own way for our review of their traffic study. But of course, the town council can subsidize that, or they can put a cap on that, or the commission could recommend that. But I always look for full cost recovery for our work. And I'm trying to remember your first question about the traffic, I think it's important to codify that there's a third independent party review of this, so that after we're all gone, we want to make sure that there's a continuum of the town making sure that the assumptions and the conclusions and recommendations are reasonable to the traffic engineering, generally to the traffic engineering practice or community, so that there is consistency and we don't have somebody coming in with an application that paints a very bright picture on the traffic impacts when in reality they didn't really consider it fairly. And having that third independent party look at it, I think is very important to make sure that the scope of the study is deemed appropriate and the recommendations and logic is sound before it comes to the commission.
So no, I agree with that. So maybe I'm misreading what this says. Is the third party review done consistently, or is it on an as
done consistently?
Okay, all right, that's helpful. Let me do one more round robin. Any final thoughts, questions, and correct me if I'm wrong, Director Dooley. If we go back and have additional questions and comments, we can submit them to you in writing. Is
Sure,
that correct?
please.
And you will
Yes.
share.
Okay.
So with that in mind, any final
Yeah,
thoughts?
always. I always
I
take a
just-
second
you're
chance.
always
I can't let
Yeah,
one
you're the
pass.
closer. Any final thoughts? You're the second closer. No, go ahead.
All right.
Councilman Goodman.
It's maybe one question about a potential ask. So a thing that a feature of the previous recommendation that we made out of the planning commission and what's gone forward to the town council is a feature of that part of the APFO is that town staff is producing a report twice a year of all of our capacity in those in water and sewer. Yeah. And the reason why that is so important there is because we have so many conversations in La Plata about adequacy of public services around water and sewer, but roads is another huge one. And I would like to be able to contribute to the public body of knowledge that we can all reference. And my thought on what that would be is that the town has a fantastic, and I'm sure underutilized, GIS portal. And if you have just a home computer, you can go to it, and there's several GIS products where you can go and look at things that are made public out there. And one of the things is you could look at the layout of the streets and the roads that run through the town. And to me, a feature of that could be added that's related directly to this ordinance is a layover of that street layout that shows any resident, these are the town streets, these are the county streets, these are the state, and we could see what a listing of those, a table of the intersections, you know what I mean? And I've seen some tables of something like this, so I think we're close.
To be honest with you, one of my staff actually dug something up that was actually done very recently in 2024 that I was unaware of that does identify local, state, and county roads.
Okay, so then
So it does exist.
Perfect.
And I think we need to
yeah,
obviously make it more public facing if people are not seeing it. I wasn't aware of it, to be honest.
right. And so what I'm wondering is the opportunity here is that built into this ordinance is a delivery of that once a year, right, from the planning department, so that we have a list of all the intersections in the town, all of, and which are county, which are town, you know, where, how all that lays out. I've seen a similar table at some point in the past too. So I'm just, we don't need to solve it tonight. But it's just it's an idea I'd like to plant. And one of the other reasons why I'd like to have that is not only in relation to just people having a better understanding of their expectations. When we say level C, level D, level E, you know, where does that apply? That kind of indicator would tell you. But the other area where I like this too is, you know, we just did some in the budget this year. We have we are now diverting the any revenues after costs that are generated by automated enforcement, things like speed cameras or red light cameras, are going into an account that we're going to use solely for public safety enhancements, for pedestrian public safety enhancements, and traffic calming. And the piece that we don't have yet, that is goodness, right? Because that is setting aside money that's generated outside of tax revenue to do those kinds of projects. But what we lack is context of where we should focus that. And so the very next thing that's going to happen is, like, in a year from now, when there's some money that has been generated there's going to be a need to have a discussion that I believe needs to be informed by some data. This is a layer of that data, because if I know where just the town intersections are, we could focus money there because we know we can spend it, where it's harder to make an improvement to a county road. But people aren't, without that information, that context, it's harder to have that conversation. I just think that this would be a way to start to build that.
Okay, so what I heard was, I'm going to take the map that the department recently discovered that we had, and look to identify all of which we have right now, but to make sure that we have the state, county, local roads, the identified levels of service that for those roads for state, county, local, and the fundamentally the significant intersections, or do you want it broken down a little bit more?
More is always better.
All right.
More detail.
We'll use our discretion.
Yeah. But as long as it's practical.
Sure.
Right. I don't want to be unreasonable either. Yeah. Okay.
Now that's something we probably not going to have for this effort, but I would certainly add that to my work plan and coordinate with our GIS folks to produce that in the next, as soon as possible.
An easy way to state it would be, within a year of its adoption, you would produce the first annual accounting of that. And I can't imagine, like, every year you're pretty much only just adding any new streets that are happening during development. It's going to be a pretty static document once it's done. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there are no additional comments, again, I would say to the commissioners, if you have additional comments, please submit them in writing to Director Dooley. He will then share them with all of us. And barring any changes, we expect to have a public hearing at the next meeting, June 2nd, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And if I may, just to regurgitate what I heard tonight in terms of comments, was that we are going to work on putting in some language into the ordinance about coordination for mitigation in the ordinance, with ultimately developing that out as part of a future implementation APFO for roads. We are going to add and go back to make sure that we cover or to clarify that we're talking about for roads for new development, not development as if something happened in the past, to address Commissioner Ford's comment. And then we were going to, under 191.93, the adequate public facility study, add a little bit of softening in the language about the 1.5 miles or as deemed necessary by the Director of Planning to address that. And then, I think that covered the basic tenets of what I heard. Unless I'm missing anything, please let me know. But we'll go back and correct that. And of course, we'll put in our work plan about the roads.
I think that's right. I think that's right.
Okay.
So let's, the final thing on the agenda is, matters of information. Anything from you, Director Dooley, in terms of what we can expect coming up?
I'm getting closer to, I can't say it's gonna happen this month, but we're getting closer to bringing the Rosewick Apartments to the Planning Commission. This is for the second phase of the apartment development off of Crane in Rosewick. That's the access for the second phase is going to come off of Washington. We're reviewing the traffic study right now for it. We have some minor site planning issues to work out, but I think we're really close on that. So that should be coming to you very shortly. I won't give you a date specifically, but we're getting close on that one. And then I will be bringing to you the state report on the update that the state requires for our comp plan. And where we stand with that for new development. So that'll be coming, if nothing else, next month to you.
Okay.
That's all I have for tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Madam
Councilman.
Chair, this is the clerk.
Yes, ma'am.
Item 7 on the agenda was public comment. Will that be offered this evening?
I apologize. Thank you for bringing me back to that. Are there any public comments? Anyone? Hearing none. Let me turn to you, Councilman Gutenberg. Any town council report?
Yeah, just a couple of things real quick. So I think you all know that the APFO first reading went very well. Had good conversation with the council, and I will tell you that individually, each member of the council has talked to me and expressed appreciation for the conversations that we had here for the first half of this year and continuing even tonight. And I think the quality of what we did and the detail and the depth we went into in the conversations here with staff and the experts that were brought in to discuss with us, a testament to how well that went is the fact that we did such a complex thing and it made it through with its first reading and the council didn't make any changes to it. And I will tell you that they all followed along with what we were doing. And so I think what we're doing in here is really useful in that way. And then another piece of evidence of how well that went. I had nothing to do with this, but the council brought up and had discussion about and have directed staff to bring water conservation as an issue to the Planning Commission. So we're going to see that on a future agenda item in the future where we're going to go ahead and talk about some of those things. And if you want to watch what the council did on it, so I can't tell you off the top of my head the meeting minute or the minute in the meeting or exactly where it was in the meeting. It was quite I think it was about a 4-hour session that we had the other night. So I'll try and remember where that happened. But yeah, if you look on the agenda, we had a discussion about that during it, and it was staff presented us sort of a shell with some ideas and some concepts in it, and the council gave their feelings on and opinions on some of it, and so that might be shaping to our thoughts here as we get into what we'll talk about on that. So it's good, exciting times.
Excellent. I did sit in on the town council's meeting. I was disappointed the APFO was the bottom of it. But it was good stuff on the front end.
Yeah,
it was a long meeting.
Yeah, I saw your name up there. So
yeah,
I did. I was pleased you were there. Yeah, and that's all I have. So thank you.
Yeah. So hearing nothing else, thank you all. This meeting is adjourned. It's 8:18. Thank you.